Okay. I found the cutest series right up my wheelhouse. Oh, sorry. It's been a day. My my cat, my diabetic cat, now seizure epileptic whatever cat. Fourth day on meds, and third day on meds, and so far, I mean, he actually was physically awake for several hours, which is better than he was the 2 days previous. He's got to get acclimated to his new meds. So, anyways, please hit the like and subscribe, thumbs up. I need this public support. You've all I've got. There's no extended family and friends out there to help me, so I need you guys to do it. Step up to the plate, please. I just read books, read series mainly. I like series. I like to read about the progression of characters from book to book to book. I'm also doing Flashback Monday, showing you series that I was reading way back when. And every Friday is Star Trek Next Generation Day. We're up to season 4, episode 1, Best of Both Worlds Part 2. And this is the D. Louise Book Series channel, and I'm Kristina, Kristina. Please like and support. I have no theme music. I have no drop-ins. I was going to experiment, but that went 6 ways to Sunday with the cat situation. So anyways, I found this cute series. Charles Dickens is a newspaper reporter in 1835 London solving murders. It's so cute. It's such a good premise. It's so good, and there's such an extended cast. It's amazing. It's so good. So the first one, and these are all puns. These are all literary puns, the titles. They're so cute. So the first one, it's Heather Redmond. They're Dickens of a Crime, and it's a tale of 2 murders. Sorry. These are so cute. In the winter of 1835, a young Charles Dickens is a journalist on the rise at the Evening Chronicle. Invited to dinner at the estate of the newspaper's co-editor, Charles is smitten with the boss's daughter, vivacious 19-year-old Kate Hogarth. They are having the best of times when a scream shatters the pleasant evening. Charles, Kate, and her father rush to the neighbor's home where Mrs. Kristina Lugoson lies unconscious on the floor. By the morning, the poor woman will be dead. When Charles hears from a colleague of a very similar death a year ago to the date, also a young woman, he begins to suspect poisoning and feels compelled to investigate. The lovely Kate offers help using her social position to gain access to members of the upper crust. Now suspects in a murder. If Charles can find justice for the victims, it will be far, far better thing than he has ever done before. But with a twist or two, in the most peculiar case, he and Kate may be in for the worst of times. Is it good or what? It's so good. And there's a whole list of characters. And I like it when authors give you the list so that if you're reading the plot and you're like, oh, who's that again? And you can go back and check the list. Charles Dickens, journalist. Kate Hogarth, the daughter of George Hogarth, Charles' editor at the Evening Chronicle. Fred Dickens, Charles' younger brother and roommate. George Hogarth, Charles' editor at the paper and Kate's father. Georgina is Kate's mom. Mary is Kate's younger sister. William is Charles' associate at the Evening Chronicle. Lady Lugoson is Baroness and mother of the victim. Lord Theodore Lugoson is the Baron and brother of the victim. And she goes on. But this is so good. I love the period pieces. If you've read C.S. Harris or some of the other ones I've done, these are so cute. Epiphany is truly the best of times, Charles Dickens exclaimed as his hostess carried a beautiful jam tart over the sideboard. The enormous dessert, decorated traditionally for the holiday with star-shaped pastry and 13 different colored kinds of jams, marking the 6 points, enticed with fruit and sugar scents. Miss Hogarth's large family applauded as she set her creation in the center of the dining table on top of an embroidered cloth depicting the three kings visiting the Christ child. A candlelight glittered over the egg-washed pastry, making Charles' mouth water. Despite the tasty meal of roast potatoes and cabbage they'd already finished, at the head of the table George Hogarth hefted a clean knife, almost slicing off his bushy side whiskers. "No, sir, it is the worst," teased his daughter, pretty Kate Hogarth, seated at Charles' side, "for father must bring home guests with whom we must share my mother's lovely tart." "You'll have your favorite jam," Charles pointed out, staring into the blue-light eyes of his 19-year-old daughter in the house. He'd been talking business with the co-editor of his newspaper all through the meal, but his eye kept alighting upon this fair maiden, despite the dozen other adults and children in the room. "Which one is it?" "Gooseberry," she said with a blush, "but you must have your first choice, while you are father's guest." "I'm only a new employee of the Evening Chronicle," declared Charles, scarcely worth noticing. "Fie," George Hogarth said, settling his free hand across his waistcoat. "Ye are most promising journalist, to be so accomplished at a mere 22 years of age. Gives me hope, my lad." "How exciting," Kate said, eyes sparkling. "You must tell us what you've been writing about, Mr. Dickens." When the initial sounds of approval from her children had diminished, the matriarch, Miss Hogarth, a decade younger than her graying husband, slid the tart across the table to him. Charles regaled them with the tale of a recent parliamentary debate he had reported upon, complete with a falling-down drunk member of Parliament, sneezing man-at-arms, and a speech that went on for 3 hours, until one poor elderly statesman, napping away, fell off the bench after snoring so loudly that held the crowd was in hysterics. By the time he finished his tale, Miss Hogarth had clutched his sleeve to keep herself upright throughout her convulsive giggles. He was proud of his tailcoat with black velvet collar. His gaze moved between her fingers sliding on the new fabric and the toothsome sight of the pie being sliced. He turned guiltily toward his host, his dining companion on the opposite side. His stares were improper, but such a tempting morsel had never yet been set before a young man on the rise. "What would you like, Charles?" Miss Hogarth asked. "One of the red ones, please." He's enthusiastic. Miss Hogarth would love the green. "Same as her mother," Miss Hogarth said comfortably. "She does make an excellent gooseberry." "Do you have a good Christmas, Mr. Dickens?" Miss Hogarth said. Her Scottish accent was less pronounced than that of her parents. "Did you see your family?" Charles took his plate of tart. The red jam was tucked inside a tangle of pastry. "My father is out beyond Hampstead, but the rest of the family is nearby. My brother Fred lives with me. In fact, I'm to supervise his education. My mother has her hands full with my two sisters and the two youngest, both boys." "How nice to have a family with ye," Mr. Hogarth said as child, perhaps 4 years old, climbed into his lap and burped loudly. "How old is Fred?" "He's 14, Charles grinned. "We had an excellent meal for my mother's birthday just before Christmas, but mostly I work through the 12 days. I write for more than one newspaper, and since I am not a family man, it seemed best to take all the work I could and relieve those with little children at home." "Very decent of you, sir," Miss Hogarth said from the opposite end of the table, where she bounced a babe with enormous dark eyes on her knees. "But I am so glad you could be with us tonight." "Thank you for having me," Charles said, before turning irresistibly to the girl at his side. "Tell me, Miss Hogarth, when did you become here from Edinburgh?" "About 4 years ago," she said. "I don't seem to have lost any of my Scottish in my voice." "I find it charming," Charles declared. "It is easy to see that your family is a musical one, with the sweet tones of your voice and those of your sisters." "We should have music when we have finished," Mr. Hogarth said, removing the child from his leg and finishing dividing of his tart. "But you have a long walk home, I know." "Where do you live?" Miss Hogarth asked as her father passed out the final plates. Charles watched the tart spread across the table. He had nothing like this in his bachelor lodgings, and his mother hadn't have the money to prepare such treats either, with her husband on the run from his financial difficulties. "I live in Holborn at Furnival's Inn. It's a quiet, rather gloomy place, nothing like here, with all the gardens and orchards surrounding your house. We live in the close contact with our fellow man." "As do we," Miss Hogarth said, pulling at a red ribbon that had come untied on the sleeve of her green dress. "See how many brothers and sisters I have." My family is not small either, Charles said, but how wholesome is it to feed your family from your own plot? That is why I can make such lovely jam, Miss Hogarth said, with Kate's help, of course. Her daughter's lips curved with her mother's praise, but then her eyebrows went up and her mouth rounded into shocked surprise. Charles heard the disturbance as well. It came from outside the snug house. What was that? He swirled around toward the heavily curtained windows. Sounded like a scream. Mr. Hogarth set down his knife and rose. He, Charles, and Miss Hogarth went to the window. Mr. Hogarth tried back one of the winter weight curtains so they could see. Charles cupped his eyes with his hands, trying to peer into the gloom, but mist had risen, undulating over the foul vegetable beds. He couldn't see anything but the ghostly branches of distant, leafless apple trees waving in the breeze. Another scream. Miss Hogarth jumped and shivered. Who lives in the next house? Charles asked. Mr. Hogarth frowned. It's a fine mansion. Lady Lugerson, a baron's widow, returned from France with her 2 children a few months ago. A widow alone? Charles' voice sharpened. The houses were spread apart. Any amount of mischief might take place with no one noticing. Mr. Hogarth noticed, his expression concerned. We must go to them, Miss Hogarth said with an admirable sense of purpose. Miss Hogarth, will you light us a couple of lanterns? Her father suggested. Of course. Miss Hogarth tucked a tray of lock of brown hair behind her ears and hurried away. The younger children scattered as Charles and Miss Hogarth went to find his outer coat and her mantle. She pulled off her evening slippers, and he steadily admired her small, narrow feet in the moment it took her to find boots and pull them on. How perfectly made she was, and how far above him. This girl had never experienced a moment want, never had a father in debtor's prison, or seen her brothers forced out of their education into warehouse jobs. Charles recognized Mr. Hogarth's coat on a hook along with their hats and brought them back to the dining room. As soon as Miss Hogarth had delivered the lit lanterns, they walked through the green glazed door leading to the kitchen, startling a young kitchen maid, and made their way out of the door closest to the garden. Across the fields floated more cries, dampened and spread by the mist. Are they being murdered? Cried Miss Hogarth. I can differentiate between 3 different females, her father said. Charles knew the man was a musical genius and trusted in his abilities. Are they in pain? Distressed, certainly. Mr. Hogarth pulled a stout walking stick away from the stone wall, and Charles and Miss Hogarth followed the older man as he walked around vegetable beds and pools of rainwater, mist nipping at their ankles. Only Miss Hogarth had appropriated footwear, though Charles, with necessary economy, had shoes suitable for long walks. The polish he painstakingly applied this previous evening would never survive this damp walk. They reached the edge of the garden and moved into the orchard, all dirt underfoot, encrusted with decaying leaves of fruit trees. May I? Charles asked, pointing at a branch just barely attached to an apple tree. Mr. Hogarth coughed and nodded. Of course, I should have thought of more weapons. Oh, Father, Miss Hogarth exclaimed, surely we don't need any. Charles tore the branch from the tree. As long as his arm, it might hold up in a fight. When he saw another branch a few feet away, already on the ground, he handed it to her. Goodness, she said, her eyes wide, but she took it stout-hearted and carried the makeshift weapon the rest of the way. When they had moved past the orchard, light from the mansion came into view. They stepped into a formal garden from the Hogarth's apple grove. A gravel path was set among boxed hedges. Charles tried to imagine the shape of them, wishing he could see set from an overhead perspective. He had viewed the front of the house earlier as he walked by with Mr. Hogarth and examined it carefully, always cataloguing information he might be able to use in an article. The house, formed in the shape of an E, had been built in the Elizabethan age, though it had been added and modified over the years with stone. In excellent condition, it spoke of wealth, if not taste. However, they walked onto the paved terrace along the side of the house. Through glass-paned doors, they could see a number of people moving around frantically in the room beyond. Black-dressed maids carrying towels, footmen in formal evening livery, moving toward a fixed point of sight. Charles viewed the modern carpet and pale apple-green paint, though the newer, robust furnishing were mixed in the late Georgian pieces from the turn of the century. Mr. Hogarth opened one of the French doors. On the sofa, Charles saw a richly dressed elderly seated next to a bespectacled man about 10 years younger. The middle-aged man peered over his glasses and offered a polite good evening. So, you'll have to check it out to find out what happens. And then we will follow with grave expectations. Um, it's June 1835. In the interest of being a good neighbor, Charles checks in on Miss Haverstock, the elderly spinster who resides in the flat above his. But as the young journalist and his fiancée ascend the stairs, they are assaulted by the unmistakable smell of death. Upon entering the woman's quarters, they find her decomposing corpse propped up, adorned in a faded gown that looks like it could have been her wedding dress, and she had been married. A murderer has set the stage, but what purpose? Great expectations. I said they were corny titles. They're following a literature. A Christmas Carol. Christmas. A Christmas Carol murder. Sorry, excuse me. London, December 1835. Charles and Kate are out with friends and family for a chilly night of caroling and good cheer. But their bloody truly runs cold when their singing is interrupted by a body plummeting from an upper window of a house. They soon learn the dead man at their feet, his neck strangely wrapped in chains, is Jacob Harley, the business partner of the resident of the house, an unpleasant cougar who owns a counting house, one Emmanuel Screws. Check it out. The Pickwick Murders. Book 4. London, January 1836. Just weeks before the release of his first book, Charles is intrigued by an invitation to join the exclusive Lightning Club, but his initiation in a basement maze takes a wicked turn when he stumbles upon the corpse of Samuel Pickwick, the club's president. With the victim's blood literally on his hands, Charles is locked away in notorious Newgate prison. Now it's up to Kate to keep up her framed fiancé from the hangman's noose. To solve this labyrinth mystery, she is forced to puzzle her way through a fiendish series of baffling riddles sent to her in anonymous poison pen letters. With the help of family and friends, she must keep her wits about her to corner the real killer before the time runs out and Charles Dickens meets an end. A Twist of Murder, Book 5. Harrow on the Hill, March 1836. In a sense, orphans Ollie, John, and Arthur have always made treasure hunters. The Mudlocks have gone from a hard-scrabble life scavenging the banks of the Thames for bits and bobs to becoming students at a boarding school outside of London, thanks to the kind and generous intercession of Charles Dickens. But now they're missing as apparently a treasure map. When Charles arrives at the school, he's hit with another twist. The servant girl who was allegedly in possession of the map has been strangled in the ice house. Unbeknownst to them on their spirited adventure, his young friends may be in mortal danger. Now Charles and his fiancée, Kate Hogarth, who has come to join him in the search for the runaways, must artfully dodge false leads and red herrings to find the boys and the map before X marks the spot of their graves. These are good. These were good. These were really good. So, Book 1, Tale of Two Murders. Book 2, Grave Expectations. Book 3, A Christmas Carol Murder. Book 4, The Pickwick Murders. And Book 5, Twist of Murder. So please check them out. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I just read books and talk books. And I will be getting to my J.D. Robb. I've got to go back to that. And my Argonautes. I'm going to do some Argonautes this week. So please check out Flashback Monday. Please check out my recap of Star Trek Next Generation, Best of Both Worlds Part 2, Season 4, Episode 1. Episode 175, but Disc 1 of the season. So please check it out. Please like and subscribe. Like I said, it's just me reading series, talking series. I have no special effects, nothing like that. It's just me reading books, talking series. So please check it out. Give me the thumbs up. I need all your support from the public. It's just me. So thank you all for joining me today. If you're a subscriber, thank you so much. Please spread the word. I need the spread. I need the words. 9 months of doing this, and so I need your support. So thank you very much and have a good day.